so happy we're alive.
One more time what it was, what the room was used
Well,
for.
this room is used for most of the meetings that we have for conferences and for VIP meetings. It's also used sometimes by volunteers who need a little extra place to work. So, but it's really generally for conference meetings.
And this is the ongoing work of the Carter
The ongoing
Center.
work, yes. The ongoing
Internationally.
Work. Right.
How many different agencies are there within the Carter Center?
There are so many and they change. And there's a lot of activity in foreign countries connected with health. You know, the guinea worm project, which is to eradicate the guinea worm. And then in addition to that, there's the river blindness. I don't know whether you know anything about that.
No.
But river blindness is a real problem, especially in Africa and the Nile. And Merck, the pharmaceutical house, had a cure for it, but they weren't sure how to distribute it. And so they gave the actual pills, which is a pill once a year, and they gave the medication, and the Carter Center was able to arrange through their contacts in the different countries for the distribution of this medication.
Well, that's wonderful.
So it really is. I mean, if you think in your whole lifetime that you were able to save maybe a couple of million people from blindness, that alone is enough of a life's work. But when you add that to all the other things, it's absolutely amazing. And there are so many of them, it is hard to tell you what they are. Okay. In addition to that, there's been some work with improving crops in sections of Africa, specifically in Ethiopia, where there was quite a large success because they did have a surplus for the first time last year of food.
Oh, really?
So that was a big thing. And Mrs. Carter told us one day that they were on a tour in Africa, and they met a man who came up to them and said that he had been expecting his sons to leave the farm because it couldn't support them. And thanks to the efforts of this new idea in farming and the productivity they'd been able to get, although we didn't use the word productivity, his sons were able to stay with him and remain in the village. And so, I mean, when you get down to that nitty-gritty of things, it really comes home to you what is being accomplished. So I think it's really wonderful. Then, of course, there are all the things about elections. The Carters go and review elections in many countries, including in China.
Oh, really?
Yes, including in China.
They have democratic
yes, they
elections
do.
in China?
At the I think it's the village level, more or less.
Oh, really?
And they've been several times, yes. So that was very interesting. And of course in a lot of South American countries too. Recently in Indonesia also, which Mr. Carter had some trepidation about because it was such a huge electorate and it was very, very difficult to monitor. But he went over there to see what could be done, and they did actually participate in that. So those are some of the things.
Are they slowing down at all? Or
No, I don't think so.
Would you say he's busier now than he was when he was president?
Yeah, he's really amazing. And Mrs. Carter too was just absolutely amazing. She came to a meeting one day and she said that she had hurt her back, I think. Oh yes, I remember. President Carter came to the meeting and Mrs. Carter was supposed to come. She'd hurt her back so she couldn't come. But the next week she was on a plane going to the Philippines and Indonesia, you know. And of course all this is in addition to the work they do at Habitat. And Mrs. Carter, of course, is interested in mental health. And she has got some very interesting programs in that regard. And she also has a program that talks about respite care for people who are taking care of older people. Because as you get older, if your parents need a lot of care, it becomes very, very difficult. And so she's been instrumental in figuring out ways in which some relief can be given to those people who have that constant care that they have to give. So, you know, there's so many, many things that are just, it's so difficult to get a grasp of. And that's so interesting. Then they had some interfaith health programs, which was generated in order to say there's some health problems that we have in the community, some of which can be addressed by local churches. And churches traditionally have had hospitals, there's the
Right.
Lutheran, and a lot of those have been sold off to these hospitals changed. And so it seemed like there was a good opportunity there to fill a void where local people could have perhaps drug programs, perhaps go out to older people who are new in their parish to see that they had insurance or advise them on different things. And that has been very successful. And what they've done with that is, for instance, when they have a cafeteria that will feed the homeless, say 500, they put it on the internet with information of how to do this. And so anybody who wants to do the same thing can then go in, tap in that to find out what is the best way to set that up.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, so there's so many programs, it's almost impossible to tell you about them all.
And is it mostly available
Interface.
through the Carter website? The
It's,
Carter
no, I
Center?
think they've set up their own, but they had a
Yes.
lot of convocations of different religions here, priests, bishops, ministers from different religions who came and met initially when the first thing was kicked off, and a lot of that work is going on, which the Carter Center really participates in very little now, but they were instrumental in beginning some of those things.
But the Carter Center, the work itself is altruistic by its very nature, but it's not.
It's practical.
It's not enmeshed in any formal religious organization.
No, none at all.
The
No, it's
Southern Baptist.
interdenominational. At the church, there's a chapel here, and that is very definitely interdenominational. Everything is interdenominational. There is no particular, no particular religion that gets a lot of attention. Of course, President Carter teaches in his own church, but that is not a factor. So it's very interdenominational. Muslims, Catholics, doesn't
Really?
make any difference. Open to all, and all treat the same. It's really amazing, and I think the splendid thing really about it is that it's altruistic in concept, but eminently practical in what it does. For example, there's a program called Not Even One. And this has to do with trying to prevent crimes against children. And what they did was, for instance, one child was killed in Atlanta on the way home from school. And what they said is, well, we're not investigating. We don't want to find out who did it. We don't want to do any of that. But what we want to look at is, what is the incident that caused this, and what are the surrounding things that could be improved? And one of the things, strangely enough, was that the grass around there was so high that nobody could see what was going on. And so they had the local, I think it was one of the civic organizations, and I can't remember which one, Civitan or one of those,
Is this
come
in
here
Atlanta?
and come in and cut the grass. I mean, it was that simple, And then they had someone else who would set up a patrol. So the things, and then they had a lighting company who would install more light. So although they're altruistic in nature, they are eminently practical in concept. And if that only saved one child, it was worth the effort.
Well, of course.
And most of it is volunteers. I mean, I'm a volunteer. There are lots and lots of volunteers here in the center.
How many people work at the center?
I can't tell you because I don't know, but it's a very small number. It is absolutely amazing to me. I mean, I worked in a large corporation, and it is amazing to me the size of the staff for what they do. I mean, considering what they do, you would think they'd have, hundreds and hundreds of people, even thousands administrative, but there aren't. There are very, very few people. Very few people, and mostly the idea is to get the program started, and then other people, volunteers and so forth, will take over, and the program will roll, just as it has with Habitat. I mean, if you had to administer a program like Habitat across the U.S., and you were the person who was doing all that to make it happen, it would be impossible. But that's not the way it works. The way it works is local people want to do it, and they apply for how do I do it, and you give them the information, and it's the local people who are doing it. So that's really, I think, the concept. Have I talked too much?
No, not at all. I don't know of anywhere where Habitat isn't active, but is it active internationally also?
Yes,
I'm just curious.
In fact, the Carters have been to a couple of times. They've gone, they go once a year to a Habitat project, and I think they went to one in Russia at one time. But it is, yes, there are habitats used in various countries. It's not limited.
Wonderful.